To have you on the set to talk to after all these years and years and years. It's been decades that you've been helping me so, and so many other people. I'm so happy to have you on the set in front of the camera to talk to the multitudes.
Thank you, Harold, but it's been 4 years.
It has. Well, it seems longer than that, and it's a welcome very, very much to Conversations. It's a pleasure to welcome to the program George Sortileis, who is monumentally involved in helping people, endless numbers of people, to do the actual in the control room and work involved in terms of turning out public access cable television programming, including my own. And he's here. He's a very interesting fellow. We're going to be talking to him about public access in his own life. It's a real pleasure, George, to welcome you to the conversation set and to the program.
Thank you, Harold. It's nice to be here.
Okay. Share with us your background. Sortileis is not exactly Irish, but I think it's Greek.
Yes.
And your background is Greek?
Well,
maybe you could share your background in that for yourself. Yeah, where you're born and raised, family, and that kind of stuff. And we could do that because the Sortileis is a Greek name, is it not?
Yeah. Well, I was born in Hawaii.
Mm-hmm. Really? Like Obama?
Hawaii, Honolulu, Triple Army Hospital.
Oh, really? Okay.
I'm a Navy brat.
Oh, you were a Navy brat. Your dad was
Navy serviceman.
Was he an officer or enlisted man?
No, enlisted man.
Right.
Enlisted 43, 44.
Really, right in the war.
World War II, Pacific.
And
you know, when you're in the military, you travel a lot.
Yeah, you go around a lot.
Yeah.
There's advantages and disadvantages to that, I guess, you know?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, so you traveled a lot, and your mother and your father were moving around.
They moved around a lot.
Did you? Let me just ask you. I got to get it straight. Did you have brothers and sisters?
No.
No, you were an only child.
Right.
Okay, and you moved around a lot, and you don't remember things too much before you were about 5 or so or something.
Right.
But it does make an impression and everything.
Yeah.
And does that resonate in your conscience that you were moving around a lot in a youthful way?
Yeah, I have a sense that I'm not rooted to any particular place because of those, or at least not so far. Because, you know, you spend 6 months in one base and a year someplace else.
Yeah.
You know.
There's some people who like that.
Yeah, but I thought it was okay.
Yeah. Don't mean to pry, George. You're my dear friend and everything.
Thank you.
It was a warm family relationship and everything? And I don't mean to pry, but, you know, I'm just wondering.
Well, I mean, my father passed away when I was 4, so.
Oh, I see.
I didn't know the guy very well.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But I guess they, you know, they married very young. You know.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of people did that.
Yeah, still do today.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. But you were raised by your mother more.
Yeah, my mother and my grandmother.
And your grandmother was important in that.
Yes.
Yeah. And
the women kept the house together.
Okay.
And the men went out to work.
Oh, well, that was the way it used to be. I'm not sure if it still is or not, but that was the way it was. And was it distinctivly Greek? The culture.
No,
your grandmother wasn't Greek, or?
On one side of the family, but they I think way back then they stressed this American thing.
Yeah, to be assimilated.
Right.
And then
exactly,
you were.
Yes.
So then you traveled all around. You're going to a lot of different places, but then did you finally end up for a long period of time in New York, or you're in New York? I associate with you in New York.
That's a good question. Did we finally? God, we traveled.
I mean, where were some of the places that you lived that you can remember?
Brooklyn.
Well, that's
California.
New York. California.
Well, first the East Coast. It was Brooklyn, Manhattan, and Florida.
You were living here in a while. This is after your father.
Yeah, after my father died.
Right.
Second and third grade, Miami Beach, and then St. Petersburg later on.
Florida.
Or earlier than that was California.
Where in California?
Southern California.
And can you remember it at all?
No, you're too young. Father was still alive.
Right.
Remember the military thing moving around.
Right.
And after he passed away, it was Manhattan and Brooklyn Heights. Back in the 50s and 60s, pre-gentrification. Pre-internet.
Yes.
The old days.
No, I'll tell
you. No laptops in the 60s.
I'll tell you about pre-internet. I know that well, yeah.
Miami Beach, Manhattan. I remember back then, no cell phones. I remember when I first noticed cell phones. When did you first notice cell phones?
Well, I could share that with you. The first time I noticed it distinctively is, I guess they were sort of there. I was coming here, as a matter of fact, on the 8th Avenue bus.
Coming
to
this
MNN
facility.
From where I live on 36th Street. And I was coming up on the 8th Avenue bus, And I'm very I like people a lot and everything, and I like people, and I'm also very empathetic, I think, and everything.
Yes,
and I was
you are.
sitting next to one of those 2 seats, you know, you're coming uptown,
Right.
and there was a lady sitting next to me, and she started talking to herself. I figured
Okay,
she
you
was
thought
just,
she was talking to
I
herself.
thought she was, well, I said, there's another poor soul who started talking to this, you know, they're losing it or something, and that she
Okay.
was on a cell phone call.
what-
And she had the phone over here. I didn't know it. And I remember, what in the hell is this? It reminded me of Dick Tracy. Do you remember Dick Tracy?
Yeah, when
They
I
used
was
to have
young,
the
yeah.
wristwatch
Yeah,
wristwatch
you were talking to
telephone.
the watch.
Yeah. That's the first remembrance I have, and I don't know if that was that long ago, but I still have a cell phone that I don't know how to make work.
Do you remember what time frame? 95, 96, 90?
No, it wouldn't have been that long even. It would have been more like 98 or something like that. You know, I think. It's just rough rule of thumb. But now everybody seems to work with the cell phone.
Not everybody, I think.
No, but the young.
The young do, yeah.
They don't have business cards anymore. You go up to somebody, you always whip out a card. You give them a business
Yeah, that's
card
what
with
I
your
do.
email and that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. They don't have, everything's on the cell phone. Seems to me among the young, all they do is have their cell phone and everything's stored on that cell phone. Have you noticed that among the young?
Yeah.
Or a BlackBerry, they call it? Yeah.
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 And a BlackBerry's a...
And a
what-
sophisticated cell phone, I
Yeah,
think.
BlackBerry, in the old days, you have a paper notebook or hard copy notebook. BlackBerry's a notebook.
Yeah,
electronic
it's a notebook, but in a form that fits in the palm of your hand.
Right, and President Obama has one.
He doesn't want to give it up.
Right.
So it must be pretty valuable because he's got a lot of sources of information, but he depends on that for. It really is a miracle that you can do that. And the internet, this program will probably be able to be seen as it's being streamed from Manhattan Network here.
Yes.
And the whole distribution is morphing over into the cell phone universe now. And there's something like 4 billion cell phones in the
Worldwide?
world. I think. I'm not sure. Don't hold me to that. But it's hugely beyond television and so forth. And they're all going on the cell phone, it seems, you know.
You're right.
They can see George Sortileis on their cell phone.
Interesting. I never thought that would happen. This internet thing is even threatening, not threatening. There's a big hit going on with printed newspapers.
It seems to me there was a piece on the news today, George, and it's been all over. Even the New York Times, the gray lady is under distress, and there's not a business model that seems to be able to compete with the print model that we've come out of history with,
Right.
a model that is valid. I think the free press in Detroit just closed down. Newspapers are closing because they assume everything's going to the internet because that's the way everything seems to be moving.
Yeah, there's many different sources, many different news sources as opposed to the 60s. When I was growing up in New York, I grew up in Manhattan,
Yeah.
and I went to my mother sent me to parochial schools, Roman Catholic schools.
Okay.
And I remember this pre-cable.
Yeah.
Although
sure.
the research in cable technology was going on then.
Right.
We had channels. We had CBS, ABC, NBC.
That's it.
We had public access. Now, Channel 13,
We had Channel 13,
Which
public
was
television. Yeah.
public television,
Yeah.
not public access.
Yeah.
And Channel 5, Channel 9, Channel 11.
That's it.
And that
yeah.
was our news source.
Yeah.
And a big news source back in the 60s and early 70s was the printed newspaper.
Oh yeah, no doubt. And before we had even that little bit of television, we had it all printed. It was a.
Oh, okay.
It was a print world.
What would Marshall McLuhan, whom you talk about a lot, what would Marshall McLuhan make of this whole issue of print and online and news media going on over the past 3 years? Did he foresee this, or what would he think about what's going on? Marshall McLuhan is a famous
theoretician.
Yeah.
I
would he be surprised?
I would never have the audacity to speak for Marshall McLuhan.
Well,
Marshall
but from what you've read of him.
I used to visit with him each spring.
You met him?
About 3 years running each spring, and from 68 to 71,
Right.
we would go to his Center for Technology at the University in Toronto.
Right.
It was an old carriage house and everything. Never could get Hamish or close.
Oh, Hamish.
But he allowed
right.
his brother Maurice. But I would never presume to say what he would think, because he was really, really an interesting person. He was very, very bright and creative as all get out. And I would say the major thing, the Gutenberg Galaxy, a book that he wrote about.
When was that written? Well, published, not written.
Well,
published.
I'm trying to think, George, you put me on the spot again. It would have come out around in the 60s, I guess. I'm not sure of the exact date,
right.
okay? But it was a tour de force, and it was about the movement, and the basic theory that he had was that Western civilization, the metaphor, the media metaphor for organizing Western civilization particularly, was the phonetic alphabet. And the phonetic alphabet created linear thinking.
Right.
Because you create
A, B, C, right.
All right. And it's stringing it out
right.
idea, as opposed to, let's say, what was happening with the electronic world coming. It was all at once. It would, like a football game, fit very well on a television because it was happening all at once. But linear thinking, it created notions of rationality, creation of the assembly line. Order in a certain sense, and it was traditional and had been there, and he wrote the Gutenberg Galaxy, which also dealt with the implications of the coming electronic communication that was going to change everything that we're going through now. And he was a tremendous student of James Joyce. And James Joyce, Finnegan's Wake, and Ulysses, was probably the best reader of the implications of technology, extended consciousness, on consciousness. And he also came up with the famous saying, the medium is the message.
The medium is the message.
Yeah, the medium by which message is conveyed is more important in terms of consciousness than the message that we all concentrate on. Right. And he was brilliant. I do not know, and I wouldn't presume to try and speculate, because I never could keep up with him. He was a creative genius of a person. He was wired, as they say, in a very interesting way. But anyway, I'm sorry, you asked me what would he think? I'm not sure. He'd be curious, and he would be using puns, and he would be using humor and everything to call to attention the things that are going on. And he fit in beautifully, like with Fuller. They were very good friends.
They knew each other?
They knew each other, yes, and everything. But he was part of that spirit of the 60s and so forth. And he was a major figure. I don't know who we have now that comes up to the standard of those two that were heralding the change that's going on, but it's now coming rapidly. But I wouldn't speak for him, because, and I never could get really warm.
Right,
Yeah.
Did he know about the research on the internet in the 60s and the early 70s?
Oh, yeah. He had a thing I subscribed to. It was called DEW Line, Distant Early Warning. It was a defensive...
He subscribed to something called DEW
No,
Line?
he put out, after his books, he had a lot of books that he published and so forth, all of which, War and Peace in the Global Village, and the Gutenberg Galaxy was a tour de force, and there were others. And then he put out a newsletter. He called it the DEW Line.
Oh, it was a newsletter.
Distant Early Warning, and that
electronic newsletter.
Well, it wasn't electronic. It was actually print, and he would distribute it. And it had to do with the implications of the coming media on consciousness and projecting. Distant Early Warning of what's coming, the result of the increasing electronic nature of communication.
Oh, he foresaw that.
Oh, yeah. He, and so did James Joyce. And James Joyce was reading it with the thunders, the implication. That's what it's all about, really, when you think about it. Human beings haven't changed biologically from 200,000 years ago, I don't think. Certainly not 50,000. It's the technology that's changing.
From, say, 50,000 before the Common Era to now, BCE.
Yeah. No, I didn't mean to go off on a tangent.
No, I'm interested in this stuff.
Fuller was, McLuhan was a giant. He was a giant of the 60s, what we call the spirit of the 60s.
Well, Yeah.
And the creative community, he was really tuned into the artists and so forth,
Yeah, and one of his interesting thoughts is the influence of the media on consciousness?
Well, yeah.
Or on creativity?
Well, yes, all of that.
Oh.
I don't want this to be a dissertation, but he had a famous saying he was famous for, like a soundbite, the medium is the message.
Oh.
So where everybody's looking at what the news is and what people are saying in the word, what's more important is the existence of the medium by which they're getting something. And then one medium comes. We didn't have television before we had
We had radio and print.
And before that, we had print. And so the existence of those technologies were more important than what was being conveyed on them.
Right.
And everybody concentrates on what's being conveyed, the words or what the news is. But the existence of those media are more important than the content.
Right.
Yeah. And it's true, you know. And we don't put enough attention. And so
we don't put enough attention into content.
No, we don't put enough attention to the implications of the media in terms of shaping the way people conceive or see the world. The changes in consciousness are more the result of the media evolving than the content of the media that's carrying programming on the media. That's all. Yeah. So he was a student of the media. Yeah. So I think he'd be amazed, as is everyone who's conscious about the changes we're going through. Like now,
the changes in the structure of how we get news, how we get information.
I would think so, don't you? I mean, it's coming in lightning speed now compared to the past.
Well, yeah, I'm a little bit surprised. Not entirely surprised, because I think Moore's law refers to computers.
Yeah.
But Moore's law, it means...
As I understand it, the capacity doubles every 18 months.
Computer capacity.
Yeah, and it had to do with the Intel integrated circuit and the silicon chip and so forth.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so it's going to where it's getting almost exponential. It's it's hyperbolic, and it's going to go even faster. When we get past the silicon chip to carbon-60, it's probably 3 or 4 years out.
Carbon-60, meaning carbon-60 is...
it's a molecule, and computer will be at the molecular... Yeah, it exists, and it was actually discovered by people down at Rice, Smalley, and they named... It's like, you have to envision in your mind, because it's molecular. Very small. It's the basis of all nanotechnology.
Do they have a model of a carbon-60 model?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like they have, remember Watson and Crick?
Yeah, right.
Early 50s.
Yeah.
Oh, they constructed a DNA molecule.
Yeah.
A molecule.
Yeah,
So where is the carbon-60 molecule?
Well, you could Google. Increasingly, you're going to see it. Google carbon-60, and it'll come up right away.
But which university was this model developed?
Well, I think of it with Smalley's at Rice down in
Rice
Texas.
University.
Yeah, and he won the Nobel Prize.
Oh, wow.
And he discovered it, and the best image you could have for that would be a soccer ball, but with 60 vertices, and it exists.
Think of a soccer ball.
Yeah, the shape of a soccer ball.
All right.
And the soccer ball, and it's like geodesic, if that's the shape of like a geodesic dome, and it has 60 vertices, and it's a molecular structure. It's molecular.
Right.
And it's got properties that are going to be used for the computing. Because it's in advance when we get past silicon chip, and
which
it
is
will
what we
be
got now, right?
Yeah, and that's going to reach a certain end, the Moore's law,
right?
And then we're going to be going to a molecular basis for computing, and it's going to accelerate as much. You know how you get more bandwidth, we get more channels and everything.
Right.
It's going to accelerate the Moore's law to exponential.
Right.
So it's a huge thing, and it's called Buckminster Fullerene.
Why is it?
It was named after Buckminster Fuller, who was another great cohort of McLuhan's.
Right.
And they call it Buckminster Fuller, and it looks like a soccer ball. And somebody should make a animation of that.
Right.
Because it's patterning the universe in a certain sense. It's operative in all of physics.
Right.
And that's coming, but that's what's coming in terms of the computing. They past the silicon chip.
And there are no computers now that operate with this.
No, it's experimental, but it is the basis, and they're beginning to come out with what they call nanotechnology.
And what does nano mean?
Nano means a billion. So it's molecular.
Right.
You're thinking molecular.
Right.
And so they're going to be able to put together new materials. They can put new materials using Buckminster Fullerene or nanotubes, and they can put together. I didn't mean to. I wanted to talk about you.
Well, I know.
But anyway,
this is part about me.
Okay.
Interest in this technology. So what were you going to?
Well, no, it's just they're going to be able to put it together. They'll be able to put materials together 1,000 times stronger than steel and 1/10 the weight or something. There's all kinds of things that are going to be coming out of nanotechnology that is just building now and just coming to
Right.
that. It's a promise of the future, and you could just Google that too, nanotechnology. And Buckminster Fullerene is the basis of all that.
He foresaw all this.
Well, no,
He predicted.
Smalley, who invented it, called it Buckminster Fullerene because the thing is like geodesic, or a soccer ball, geodesic. Geodesic stood for structural design. And the idea of design, and Fuller was a great designer, and he got along with McLuhan well and everything.
Right.
And it looks like they had geodesic domes. That's the most.
Buckminster Fuller wasn't an architect.
He was hard to put a label on because he was a comprehensivist.
It's hard to say what he was. He was a writer. I mean, wasn't a mathematician, wasn't a philosopher.
He was. He had a great synergetics. It's all geometry. It's a geometry of nature,
Well, you
and
couldn't really
geometry of
say-
the universe.
You couldn't really say that he was a mathematician.
Well, you could. You could say
You
it was
could?
anything. It's very interesting. Like I did a doctorate dissertation down in Bolivia. I was down there in '65 and did a study among the Aymara Indian peoples
Right.
there. That was a very interesting thing. They were cultural hearth of one of the four main cultural hearths where they had a food source, the High Highland food source that made civilization possible. And then I came back to Detroit in the 1965, and here everybody had their hair down to their backside,
Right.
and there was this war raging in Vietnam. And
I
everything.
missed that one.
Oh, it was horrible, and there was all this, Malcolm X and Bobby Dylan singing songs and everything, and I was wondering what the hell is going on. And there came on the television, black and white.
Right. They didn't have color sets in the
I don't think so. I think that was before.
I don't remember
color.
watching
Yeah.
a color.
But there came on the same time frame, within a month or a couple of weeks, there's two people that came on talking to intellectuals, saying the same thing in a sense. They say, dare to be a comprehensivist instead of being a specialist.
Dare
One
to
would
be-
a comprehensivist.
Right.
Be interested in everything rather than getting specialized.
Oh, yeah, to be all-encompassing.
Yeah, so, and Fuller was one of those, and the other one was McLuhan, and that was an advice. And I always liked that because you could be comprehensively interested in big patterns rather than specialized, you see. So it's hard, when they came around to giving Fuller a doctorate, he got thrown out of Harvard for hijinks. I don't know, something with a lady.
He was
or
expelled in his
yes,
undergraduate
when he was
days?
young, yeah, he took a
Really?
lady to dinner or something. Anyway, and he got expelled. But when they finally had to give him this great honorary degree,
Right.
they didn't know what the hell to give it to him
In what
because he was
field?
a poet, he was an architect, he was a comprehensivist, and there are no academic disciplines in reality. The Greeks taught us that. There are or the Vedics. There are no disciplines. We just break it up, partly because of the alphabet. And we break everything up into specializations.
Chemistry, mathematics, biology.
Yeah, topology. Everything. Yeah, we break everything up, but it's all interrelated as one whole system in the universe.
Well, there was a time in the ancient world,
Yeah.
but more especially in the Middle Ages, where you would have famous intellectuals who did all the disciplines. They didn't break it up.
Well,
I mean,
yeah, I guess they
Descartes
would.
was.
It's certainly
known-
true of the Vedic tradition.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the Western tradition, particularly a lot of the Greek, it was phonetic alphabet, the
Yes.
Phoenicians maybe.
Right.
And it broke everything up into specializations. That's the way everybody
'Cause
has to specialize.
Aristotle and Plato examined everything.
Yeah, I think so.
So I think the specialization occurred a lot in the modern age.
Well, it did. It galloped with the computer because they went linear regression. You can go in great detail about everything.
Right.
You can go in you can write a dissertation on the use, as I've used the example, you've heard me say it on other programs,
Right.
the use of the pluperfect tense in the first half of 13th century poetry in the southeast corner of one of the provinces of France.
Right.
And you get so specialized down that you don't think about patterns.
Right.
And people get so specialized out. I'm a lawyer, I'm a doctor, I'm a this, and they get specialized out. You get into great detail, information overload. You can just get lost in any of the disciplines. You never think about the whole big pattern, which the big guys think about, and become a threat
So
to the existing order, except maybe the artists do.
So the big picture is something, a term I've heard used called the zeitgeist of the culture.
Yeah, I think so.
The culture-
I think zeitgeist is literally spirit of the age.
Spirit of the age, the whole spirit of the age. There was the age of Aquarius when I was young.
Yeah.
Well, I was only a kid. I was in grammar school in the 60s.
I don't know when we dated. There was a play or a musical.
Yeah.
It would be about 69 or 70
That would be.
through that
I think it was a famous play reflecting that would be Hair.
Yeah, Hair. Yeah, right. In popular
I
culture.
I didn't see it because I was too young. What would be? I'm trying to figure out from my own experience. What would be the age now that someone would think that we're in? Looking at, say, 2002 till now, 2002 to 2012. What would be the age of? Not the age of Aquarius, that's for sure.
Well, that was astrological. We had been in Pisces and we're coming out, and so that was a reason for contemplating change.
Right.
I didn't want, you're asking me questions, but I was going to try and get to you. But, I mean, you don't want to ask me that because I think we live in the most exciting time ever imaginable. I mean, this is just, I think we're coming to the end of the human experience.
That is a reflection on a book I was going to read by Fukuyama.
Well, Francis Fukuyama wrote The End of History.
Yeah, I read a little bit of it. It's called The End of History.
Well, you got the book, did you? Yes.
Yeah. Well, but it's not the end of history. Not from my point of view. It's,
well, we still seem to be here, don't we?
Yeah. I don't know what's going to happen over the next... what
do you think is going to happen? Are you positive or optimistic for the, let's say, human prospect or humanity?
You mean,
or
the economy?
Yeah, the whole ball of wax. Are you optimistic the human and ecological prospect, or do you feel sometimes negative? And what do you think? Or are you pessimistic, or what do you think?
Well, probably...
We're in the year 2009 now, right?
Yeah, we're in 2009. We have a new president over 3 weeks. That's a hard question to answer.
Well, maybe just off the top of your head, what do you feel optimistic?
I think you have to be optimistic.
Yeah, I think it's more...
Yeah. I mean, if you look at 1900, 1910, they tried, what was the European thing to do?
Go backpacking through Europe?
No, I'm checks not sure. And balances amongst the great powers. I'm trying to figure out why there was a World War I.
Who the hell can figure? Barbara Tuchman, did you ever read that?
Yeah, I mean, I read The Guns of August. That's another. I mean,
I know you read a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned one of the things I've read a lot ever since I was young because I was.
Yeah, I know you read a lot. Yeah, you were an only child, so you read a lot.
Yeah, and then one of the things that struck me, and I had a deep interest in many different topics.
I know you.
History, church history.
Yes.
Military history.
Yes.
I'm interested in military history and church history, urban history, how cities change. And one of the things I've been interested in is how does a war start and why do people kill each other?
Very important subject, yeah.
I was especially curious about World War I.
Okay, yeah, it is a...
Because it seems like World War I and World War II were just one war.
It seemed that way to me, too, yeah.
Beginning July, August 1914.
Yeah.
Culminating in August, September 1945 with the surrender of Japan.
See it all as one long thing, right?
Yeah, with a big break in between with a lot of European politics and economics and the Depression. And a key tipping point towards the continued conflict was whatever you say about Hitler, he seemed to have at that time a knack for politics over a 15-year period.
Yeah, he was
very evil genius.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of curious about that. But I was very curious, why would these European powers go to war in July, August 14?
Yeah.
Because it seems like Europe was getting very prosperous.
Yes.
So if you was asked that question of someone in 1913, 14, are you optimistic?
Yeah.
I just said, oh yes, I am. So.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But how do you think the first was the Archduke and all that, and there were inter-alliances, but what is your thought about how that
started?
Horrible war.
We're still living with the consequences now.
Yes. Yeah. I think so.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know why. It was so odd. Europe had that 1815...
Westphalia?
No, the Congress of Vienna.
Oh, Congress of Vienna. Okay, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And there was no major European war for 100 years.
Okay.
There was a lot of, there were mini wars.
Right.
So, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you, but it's very sad what happened. I mean, The Archduke is assassinated, and then the Russians mobilize.
And they couldn't predict that. That's one of the things that's worrying me now.
That's why
people
when you
think everybody's in control, but that was interlinking alliances, and you cannot predict. It's like a synergy that you can't predict. That something crazy that seems impossible just by interlinking alliances could happen.
That's why when you ask me, what do I think is going to happen over the next 30 to 60 years?
Well, okay.
Basically, am I optimistic? I said yes.
Okay.
I think we have to be optimistic. I mean, to be pessimistic would be too easy.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's difficult to be optimistic, but although after 9/11 attacks in New York and the London and Madrid terrorist bombings, who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah. I was just thinking in a different way. Optimistic and pessimistic. So those are two like polar opposites or something in a way. And then you can go along that maximally optimistic, maximally pessimistic. You can go along.
What does that mean, maximally pessimistic?
You can be optimistic. It's just a thought I'm trying to play with now, actually, as I talk to you about it. If you're optimistic, that's a generic term. And you could be only 5% optimistic about the things that could happen along that optimistic line.
Right.
Or you could be 20%, or you could be 100%, or you could be negative. You could be, we're going to have little wars where a few people are going to die, or you're going to have an outbreak of Ebola, or you're going to have an all-out destructive release of all the weapons of mass destruction along that positive, what's the opposite of optimistic? Pessimistic line. Right. So those things, the capability of mankind collectively, or mankind in the role, has become so much more extended, more important in terms of the overall system than we have been throughout.
What do you mean by capability?
Well, I'm not sure. Capability would be unrealized.
Military?
Well, military or just along all lines, right, George? I mean, it's all a matter of the technology and the knowledge base, and we have a capability to produce. We have a capability that is not carried. You could have lived in the 6th century, and it took hundreds of years to invent a tack. Now, every day there comes a revolution from every discipline. We're now learning about neurotransmitters, the way the brain works, and physiology, nanotechnology. We're getting a revolution every. So it's like a quickening.
The speed of technology.
Yeah, and the resultant content of the optimistic scenario, the capability for both destruction. I think the weapons are species lethal. I really do. The weapons that exist.
Illegal?
Species lethal.
Oh, yeah.
Now that's something that should be made clearly of it, which they weren't in so recently as the Second World War.
Yeah, you're right. I've never heard of that. Yeah, I've never heard of that.
No, do you think it's true?
Yes.
In your gut?
Yeah.
We used to live with mutual assured destruction and everything?
Mad.
Mad.
From the late 40s through early 80s.
Like they used to go duck under our desk and say duck and cover under the desk when the atomic bombs start falling?
I understand. I remember that. I never did that as a child. And oddly enough, the schools that I was in, the Roman Catholic schools, and I went to the 2nd grade in a public school. Yeah. I don't remember ducking under a desk.
You don't remember that?
No.
It was there, part of the zeitgeist, as they say.
Yeah.
But
the speed of technology.
Yeah, and also we were impotent in terms of our collective capability, the weapon systems that we evolved as a leading edge of research and technology and funding and sociological, economic, political development, were very primitive compared to what they have become since Einstein and theory of relativity.
We are primitive today?
No, they were primitive.
Back then?
We had bow and arrow. We had a club, and then we had a bow and arrow, and then we had finally a rifle. Then we get a Gatling gun, and then we get a dreadnought, and we get, it just goes. And then we get hydrogen weapons, now we get gas, we get germ warfare, we get wave weapons out of strategic defense, and we finally got to the point where collectively those systems, if they were to be unleashed, as they were in the Second World War, I don't know, you did modeling, you could only be modeled. In the Second World War, we were trying as hard as we possibly could with full throat hatred of the evil other, whether you were on the Axis side or the Allied side, to kill everybody.
In World War II?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we were not able to do only so much damage. We firebombed Dresden, we firebombed Tokyo, we did that. There was all kinds of, but we were impotent collectively in terms of the species.
What is impotent?
Impotent means you're not able to realize the full, we were not able to kill all of humanity with the weapons that had developed through time.
They could have done that.
I don't think so.
We
tried. We were trying, and we couldn't do it until the war was resolved.
Well, they dropped an atomic bomb in Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Two big boys. That was the only two they had.
Oh, but we have enough weapons now to destroy everything.
Well, that's a question. Do we?
I don't know, do we?
Well, this is something that I think should be on the front page of every consciousness in the world, if that is not the case. I think it is. And it's existentially new. In terms of 200,000 years of human existence, we've finally been so clever to where we got the ability to set off weapon systems that will destroy everybody.
So, for the first time in history?
Yeah, since about 1970. Most of the modeling seems to indicate.
Most of the modeling indicates that.
Well, that's as far as I think people should really run that down.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. We actually have enough stuff where we can go kill each other.
Kill everybody.
Kill everybody.
Not just kill the other tribe and the other villages and steal their grain and do all the kinds of things we've been doing throughout history, which still continues. The nationalism, all the outdated ways of thinking and all that kind of stuff is characteristic of the contemporary moment.
Right.
And we don't bring it up, but it is there. Maybe we think because we defeated Soviet Union, everything's okay because the good guys, us, can now run the world, and we're not going to do anything like that. We're not going to, it would probably mean, it would necessarily almost mean there would have to be something that would trigger the unleashing of the weapons in the American arsenal to achieve pure species annihilation.
Well, there wouldn't be any.
So they want to say some rogue would do it or something, but that would be something that, like Guns of August, would set off an interrelating thing of where it's we can't do it, and finally somebody would pull the plug and
Would set off a chain reaction.
That's right. Like that's what happened with the Guns of August.
That was the chain
Barbara
reaction.
Tuchman. That was the great book.
But they did a chain reaction in July, August, September 1914. Their chain reaction was with rifles and machine guns.
That's right. They finally got the Gatling gun.
They
were able to limit mustard gas. Remember?
Yeah, they did.
Mustard gas was horrible.
They had tanks.
They'd got the tank. Churchill was a big
But mustard gas,
tank.
mustard gas is not going to cause mass killing.
No, I don't think so. But I think things that they have now would not only mass killing. We've always had. It went from where in the turn of the 19th, 20th century there were about 100 deaths among civilians. What was it? For every
soldier?
10 deaths among there was 100 soldier deaths for every 10 civilian deaths
100
in war
soldier for every
at the
10.
turn of the 19th. That went from where at the end of the 20th century there were 900 civilian deaths for every. I mean, it was 10. The same 10. 10 to 1. It was 9 to 1 at the beginning. Civilian soldier in the field, and then it went the exact opposite. Overwhelmingly more civilians are now killed in warfare than our soldiers. So it's moving into an era of mass extinction, and a mass extinction capability, and we don't have, and so that's something that would be worth having modeling of that would be on the front page of the newspaper as something to let us know about the capability of the zeitgeist,
Well, what?
Of the spirit of the age, or we should be dealing with capability rather than the inherited realities, perhaps.
Well, we have more civilians being in the military conflict of our age now, as opposed to when I was young. More civilians are killed, but don't we have smarter weapons?
We have, very, very smart weapons.
And we should have.
They have predators, drones
laws.
that can go without people.
Don't we have
We're going to probably have predator soldiers that won't even have soldiers to march into bomb fields and stuff. Yeah.
Don't we have a Geneva Convention that helps protect civilians?
I think so, don't you? We have it. We were violated. I think under Mr. Bush, the Geneva Conventions were violated. They tortured. They did things. Yeah. But yeah.
So, why would more civilian deaths go up?
Well, no, I didn't say they would. I said there's one thing to say what happens in reality, and another thing to say capability.
Capability. Oh, well, okay, I understand.
We
have the capability.
That destructive capability and that extreme expression of pessimism can't be tested. You can't do it. Let's blow up everything and see if a couple people survive the species to carry on in New Guinea cave somewhere. You can't do that, do you understand?
Right.
So it can't be done, but
Right.
it would be at a level of capability, right?
Right.
Do you understand?
Yes.
Or do you think? So in that level, and that's the extreme extension of pessimism.
Mm-hmm.
It would seem to wipe out the whole species. It would be a shame if we get to the point where, because many species have, I don't know of any other species that was able to extinguish themselves. It's unique in terms of our consciousness. It's an extension of our consciousness, and no other creature has the ability to extend consciousness through technology and create an environment other than in the Eden-like sense is given.
Right.
It's unique only to us.
We have consciousness.
Yes.
And
don't you think?
we don't think that other mammals or creatures don't have consciousness.
Well, they have a consciousness, but we have a consciousness that is able to extend itself.
We do.
A cow walks into a field and eats grass and
Right.
makes milk, but the cow can't make a house. Or, you know, or even an Australopithecine
Right.
couldn't make a house.
Right.
You know, 4 million years ago, they could find a cave they
yeah.
could wander into. But you can extend your 200,000 years ago, Homo sapien appears, and we can extend our consciousness. We made a club to hit somebody else over the head.
Well,
and then kill a beast or kill a person,
Right.
and you know, all that, and then it's
Right.
built up. And now it's gotten to the point where well, I don't know if it is or not.
it's taken 50,000 before Common Era. 50,000 BC. What was the state of human technology? We don't even know.
Primitive.
We don't even know.
Pre-Cro-Magnon and everything.
We don't even know if there was what we call speech in 52. But these things evolved slowly over a very, very, very long time.
I think so, don't you? Yeah.
Yeah.
And the whole evolutionary process, 3.8 billion years.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Ev Dirksen would call real time.
3.8 billion years? What was happening 3.8 billion years ago?
Well, that's when the first the organic process, the beginnings of what was to become the organic process began on this planet.
Right.
After, you know, and it's all part of one system.
Mm-hmm.
And now we reach the point where I don't think we're at the point where we can destroy the whole planet.
But most people, we can destroy
there are
most
lots
people.
of studies that say we can set off weapon systems that would destroy every single human being in the world.
Most human beings.
Yeah, we haven't been able to do that except in our lifetime.
Right.
That's a marker. That's like an existential reality that people ought to think about.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's the case. Maybe there'd be some survivors.
Probably there would be.
Probably. There always has been.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we've had great extinctions, but it's interesting that would be the case of the time in which we live as a marker of an existentially really unique, significant moment, don't you think, in the evolution of consciousness?
And this began around 1970.
Well, most of the modeling says that's when the systems got. We couldn't do it in 45. We were trying.
We didn't have the technology in 1945.
We weren't smart enough. We weren't clever enough to where we'd. But by about 1970, most of the modeling that's about when the weapon systems became species lethal in capability. Mm-hmm. That should be chapter and verse. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the models is various. And the
technology became.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
The technology became species lethal.
The weapon systems that
system
exist,
became
not the special theory of relativity.
No.
Or an inflection point of some idea or theory, but actual systems that exist.
Right.
You know, and so you measure the capability.
Right. The real capability.
Right.
Real.
Yeah. Capability, not the reality.
Right.
Not the reality, because it's not unleashed.
Well, exactly.
Yeah, but it's the capability that is there, and they build it up within the old paradigm and everything, and so it makes this a very unique moment. I mean, all of human history, there was no way that humanity, with its bow and arrow or its club or flint, could kill all of humanity.
Or musket gun.
Or mustard gas. Even then, that would have been European. Yeah, there wasn't anything. I think a lot of the germ warfare things figure into that, because you have to bring in germ warfare and.
Germ warfare only was gas World War I.
Yeah, but there's other things too, and biological warfare.
World War II.
And then there's wave weapons that have come out of Strategic Defense Initiative.
Wave
Black
weapons?
Ops things that are in the realm of.
What's a wave weapon?
Wave weapon. I'm not even sure, to tell you the truth. You know who knows? Nico Halp knows a lot about that.
Nicholas Halpin?
Nico Halp, the friend of Paul at Gloria. who writes on that. And there's books on black ops, and there was that whole thing coming out of its weapons. Some people, well, we're drifting off. And we're drifting off from your life. I was keep asking you story, and we just got off on tangents.
You mean you want to...
you were talking about you. How did you come to read what you read?
This is not tangential. My life and your life, I believe, are very, very tied up in what we're discussing.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay, spell it out. What do you
No, there's nothing much to spell out. I mean, are we...
Yeah, we're both involved in doing television.
What will happen over the next 30 to 50 years?
Wow.
I mean, I will have a lifespan, but if you really want to be connected to people, you have to not just think in terms of your own lifespan, you have to think of what's going to happen in 2030, 2050, 2080.
Absolutely.
And if... and it ties in with I have a lot of hobbies, and one of my hobbies is history.
Yes, I know you do, and you read widely.
Yeah, I've read a lot. And,
yeah, you have.
And it's not like, I'm going for a PhD, but there are many things about history that fascinate me. It's one of my hobbies, in church history and history in general. Mm-hmm. What's the famous saying? He is doomed to...
is it Santayana?
Santayana. George Santayana said what? He...
I can exactly. If you don't study or learn the lessons of history, you're doomed to repeat it. The mistakes of history, something along that line.
Yeah. And also, I'm also interested in... There's a whole range of academic study called futurism.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Fuller was a great futurist.
Yeah, that's why I didn't mean to get, discuss my life, but... Part of my life is thinking about things like futurism and Buckminster Fuller. Theoreticians try to write what will our zeitgeist, what will culture be, how would it be technology in terms of the creative arts in like 30, 80 years from now, right? I mean,
yeah. So
I wonder that myself, and I'm trying to. I wonder if anyone. Oh, I know what.
What? Tell me what.
You read accounts or see what people in, say, 1950, 1955 would, they would imagine what things would be like in 2000, 2005.
Right. H.G. Wells?
Right.
Yeah.
And how some of the stuff, some of it didn't turn out.
I know, you're right.
And I think you know more about this than I do.
I don't know. There's a lot. Yeah. The Whole Earth Catalog. And Yeah, projection, futurology.
That's it.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't know who's...
Stuart Brand. Yeah.
Who's Stuart Brand?
Stuart Brand is the publisher of the Whole Earth Catalog and all of that,
Right.
Major figure in cybernetics and everything. Mm-hmm. They used to have,
So what does cybernetics mean?
Cyber is a Greek word.
And what does it mean? Because you talk about that a lot. Cyber.
Well, it's very much in
and cyber means what?
Cyber means steersman. And it comes from, it's Greek, and it was coined by Norbert Wiener, belonged about 1946, in a room with about 10 guys in it. Mark Stallman, he's been a guest on our program.
Mark Stallman.
His father was in the room with him.
Right.
Norbert Wiener was a great cybernetic scientist and philosopher of information.
Computer scientist.
Computer scientist. Okay. And when there was no computers, hardly, and everything. But they coined the term cyber. It means steersman.
Right.
So it means to steer, and it's Greek.
Right.
You're Greek.
Right.
So, yeah.
And they, in a sense, were they computer scientists in 1946,
well, I think
49?
They were theoreticians. Turing before that, and they had the perception and it was all built and everything, but now it's going with gangbusters now.
Right. But I think those guys in the late 40s were pretty on the mark.
Oh, yeah. Well, they were smart.
Yeah. Because that's what happened. Yeah.
Yeah, it's culminating now. But in a pregnant, people who live in our building, lovely people. Remember Humphrey? You've met Humphrey, the dog?
Yeah.
Isn't he wonderful? I love that dog. He's so gorgeous and everything.
Right.
And he belongs to a friend who lives in the building. Why do I love Humphrey?
Right.
He's just gorgeous.
No, but what about the friend? What about your friend?
Oh, he happens to be a lawyer at AIG, the big company that's under fire now and everything. But his wife is about to have a child, which is a great event when it happens and everything. So we're waiting for it, and it called my attention to the fact that it's like a pregnancy.
The culture today.
Well, I was thinking more about where we are, because if you take, on the other side of that destructive scenario, there's got to be in a yin-yang, because of the sense there's got to be some
constructive.
Equally existentially significant transformation in the zeitgeist, or the spirit, or the reality of the age, at a level of capability equally significant to the destructive.
Right, a positive.
Positive side.
Right.
And it's like mine is in Fuller, and we actually have now, in terms of projecting our capability, not what exists.
For the positive.
Yeah. We got an institutional structure, and all of our institutions have been built out of a certain, but I think we've probably collectively as a society and within an ecological context have transcended material scarcity as an ontologic reality. And we probably crossed that line about 1970, the same time the weapons did.
Right.
And so we have a capability of, all of our institutions were formulated within scarcity. There's not enough, so all of your institutions are formulated over 200,000 years of experience, and we're getting to a point where we need a vision of an alteration that can make it possible for us to get to another lane. It's like a pregnancy. At the end of a pregnancy, the water breaks. Women would be more significantly associated with this, perhaps going through that process. But it isn't, it's a thing of its time. And it's like we're probably coming into a new relationship to the cosmos if we make it. It would be like liberation. James Joyce said, history is a nightmare from which I'm attempting to awaken. And it may be getting to the point where the application of a thing where everybody can maximize their full potentiality rather than walking around like serfs on a feudal estate to a few people who own all the assets.
The way it was,
and you don't have a system in place that's relevant to what the future requires. It just reifies the old systems out of the past, and we don't have vision. Where will it come from? It's going to, you know, that kind of thing.
But you said the key phrase, the end of scarcity. But there's so many people in the world who are starving and homeless, and there's so much great deal of poverty. I mean, you sure we've hit the, we might be at the end of... I sure am
not sure.
What does that exactly mean, the end of... Because interesting, I've heard that before.
First, make a distinction, George, if you could, between the reality...
and the theory.
The reality of blowing up the whole bloody world with our weapons is a capability. It's not a reality. Thank God. Because we'd all be gone to smithereens if that were tested. It can't be tested. On the other side, that we've transcended into scarcity undercuts the assumptions by which all of our institutions are formulated, virtually. They're all essentially economic. We have a big economic crisis. We have a way of relating things to where, like James Joyce said, history is a nightmare from which I'm attempting to awaken, and it's all about power and influence, and the nation state that can go and get strong and steal the grain from somebody else for their own tribe, and nationalism and all these things that have come out of all of our human history that is now outdated by the zeitgeist, and we need a vision to what the future requires for a liberated humanity with an ecological context that will bring us into a new relationship beyond what we've been to the cosmos throughout the human experience. It's time to for birth to a new way of being in universe. Perhaps, or the building, the birth canal to that. And we don't have that vision. We just reify the old institutions which allow a few to run everything and have all the power, and everybody else running around picking up leaves on a feudal estate.
A few nation states running things?
A few people around the world running things. Kings, we used to call them emperors, kings. Then we had bankers, and we have the people who run things, and they don't have a vision that will bring liberation to where every part of the human society, like the cells of an organism, all of which matter, liberation is called.
Liberation.
Martin King would have said, you know, we get to the mountaintop. Liberate, change, open up, waking. James Joyce said, history is a nightmare of injustice and lack of ability for the people to realize their potential in a way like an orchestra where everybody's playing their instrument full tilt, and we don't have systems that can relate to that because it's all a matter of having been formulated within a condition that's been superseded by the ongoing ontologic development of reality. Pregnant. And when the border breaks, we're coming to that point and we need the vision. So we can destroy, and we may be tested in universe. We're going to come to a new relationship collectively like an orchestra where every instrument is playing in a liberated way, so the women don't have to worry about which kid they're going to let starve to death because there's not enough food for them. They can live a way in which they'll be able to realize their full potential. Every cell within the human organism will resonate in the universe.
You're talking theory.
Yeah, capability. And we've transcended material. There's enough for everybody beyond, and it's going to gallop that way with the technology that's coming now. So we're so used to fighting for scarce this and that and everything, and we got all of our assumptions built on that. So we need vision for a future that is,
In the past, we're fighting for scarce resources.
And we still are. All of our institutions,
and
the nation state,
and you're
the
saying,
Congress, the President, the
you're
Federal Reserve Board, all of the
exactly.
systems
You're saying
by
that
which
we no longer have scarce resources.
No, we have a capability to transcend it. We have a capability to provide for everybody in a unique way is equally significant the fact that we can destroy everybody.
Well, I see.
Or what would be the counterspailing positive, existentially significant factor in the evolution of universal consciousness that would be comparable to the fact that we can wipe ourselves everybody out? What would be equally comparable on the positive side? I say material scarcity because that's what we're all hung up over.
Material scarcity.
Yeah.
I guess.
I mean, I don't know.
I guess. Well, I can.
And I think we're going to need public access television for places where people can communicate and tap into some of that capability in a scenario kind of way.
Right.
Because the more you're ensconced in the old institutions, the less you're able to see. So they're going to have the places where vision of alternative systems, economic, political, social, everything.
Well, the
everything
big alternative now is news and information online on the internet.
Well, the internet is coming, and it's coming in Niagara.
No, it's already here.
It's not totally here, but it's coming. So that's what I say. When you say optimistic or pessimistic, you can be optimistic in the maximum or a little way. We're going to get a few people more able to eat or something, or that.
Yeah.
But to do it in the full tilt, boogie sense of the time, like pregnancy, water's about to break kind of thing, we need real vision, a big change. And we don't have it coming from anywhere. It's probably going to come out of public access, like the shows that you make possible, and that ought to be supported by all the good citizens of this country and the world.
I mean, you're touching on public access.
Or similar things, similar communications, things that can tap into the spirit of the zeitgeist, right?
And zeitgeist means culture.
Yeah, pardon?
Culture.
Culture, yeah, sure, everything.
Right.
Yeah, so you want an analogy.
And you don't want the media to. Oh, wait a second. When did this public access start? In the 60s?
The which one?
Public access. When did it begin?
It started about 1970.
Okay,
70 is, there's a case to be made for making 1970 a sort of year one.
Yeah, I know.
Because everything was being transformed.
You've always spoken about that.
Yeah, I think it's true. So public access got seriously started in an institutional way. There have been things going on in Pennsylvania and everything, but in a serious way, it opened up a unique communications capability to the people that didn't have to be marketed. Or had a way to get avoided.
It brought in what it did in 1970 was similar to what happened with radio in 1960, when I forget the name of the gentleman who did this. It happened even before 1960. The idea of having radio, non-commercial, non-corporate radio, and it was called the Pacifica Foundation.
Pacifica, Diane Cochran used to be our executive.
The executive director of the current public access of Manhattan Neighborhood Network was the director of WBAI's New York station.
Yeah, that's right. There are 5 others.
And the idea of alternative media was began by the 1960 establishment of the Pacifica Foundation.
Absolutely important.
And you've told me,
Mr. Hill, Mr. Hill.
And you've
great.
told me that public access, the idea of it started even before 1960.
Well, it started, but it was there because it was just a thing that happened way
In
back
fact,
when.
it was
But
even
institutionally, it was about 1970 when the franchise agreement and the way that's there, which is under threat now, and people should understand that.